send it out to others who couldn't attend. So I think you probably have to say okay. But I will now crack on. So what I'm going to do is just very brief introduction into sort of on the macro level circular economy stuff. Then I'll do a bit of an overview on repair cafes as a sort of a broader movement, and then I'll focus in on Farnham Repair Cafe and our experience. And hopefully I'll do that in about half an hour, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and thoughts and observations. So I'll crack on. So I'm just a quick introduction. I'm Martin Charter, and I'm a professor at UCA in Farnham of Innovation and Sustainability. Worked originally in business, but linked to UCA for 20, 30 years now. And I have, as a part of my activities and are focusing on the community, I started to sort of get interested in the whole area of the new groups of citizens who are becoming makers, modifiers and fixers, and how places and spaces are coming together to enable that. So maker spaces, hacker spaces, repair cafes, but also the role of online videos in helping people sort of make, modify and fix. And so in sort of 2014, as part of a European project event we ran in Farnham, around that area, which I really didn't promote, but I ended up getting about 100 people from, about 10 countries. It said there was something going on. So the story started from there. So I'll come back to that in a minute. So essentially, the concept of circular economy has emerged much more extensively over about the sort of last 8 to 10 years. And essentially, it's the idea of moving from a sort of linear so-called take, make, waste economy to an economy where we're retaining value in societies and economies. Global trends there, the use of the terminology in Google is growing significantly, and various sort of policy activity happening in different countries, particularly being driven globally by Europe and the European Commission. And the idea that sits behind this is that from a product point of view, we've got products from the biological system, wood, natural materials, and then we have technical items, metals, plastics, etc. And it's how we, on the technical side, how we repair, refurbish, remanufacture to extend the life of those materials. But in reality, that concept from the Elaine MacArthur Foundation is a bit simplistic, because many products will include multiple types of materials that include biological and technical products. This is just something called Healthy Seas socks that includes fibers from fishing nets, elastomer and organic cotton. So it's mixed materials. Whilst it's a movement in the right direction, in effect, it's designed for landfill, because you can't disassemble those items. So circular economy is about value and not about waste, in my opinion. And this is what we're looking to avoid. And what we're looking to do is to extend the life of products, essentially for as long as possible, and delay that end of life period. So repair has a significant role within that. If you repair a product, you're extending the life of the product, and you're also reducing CO2 emissions, and I'll come back to that. So what we started to see, perhaps on a broader scale, is the emergence of the so-called right to repair movement. And actually, unusually, it started in the US, actually in the automotive sector, and then has moved across to Europe, and particularly in the circular economy action plans, the European Commission, right to repair has been sort of written into policy. And as of today, I understand that the Commission will be announcing something in terms of their activities on right to repair in a bit more detail in March. So honing in on repair cafes. So repair cafes are community workshops that are generally manned, if you like, in italics, by volunteers, volunteer citizens generally, and the goal is simply to repair products. And the main goal from 3 sets of global research we've been undertaking is the main prime goals of repair cafes are, to reduce, waste in, although I'm talking about value there, it's the environmental aspect of repair cafes is a key part of it. Again, I'll come back to that point. So 2,500 in the world, continuing to grow. By far the highest proportion is in Europe, but there are networks and repair cafes growing in the US and in Canada and in Australia and New Zealand. And we've seen a sort of general ongoing rise there. We saw, so obviously under lockdown, we saw repair cafes activity diminish a bit or a lot, but again, I'll also come back to that. But we're now seeing a whole series of repair cafe activity emerging in different parts of the world. In reviewing the Surrey region, before I focus in on Farnham, we've identified a series of repair cafes at the moment. So there's the one we do in Farnham, Hazelmere, Godalming. Guildford has had a repair cafe but lapsed, but it's good to see that it's on the rise again with Susie joining here. And Dorking, Reigate, and slightly and Egham. And I understand Egham is also struggling perhaps a bit at the moment, but we're again happy to talk and share knowledge with all, repair cafes in Horsley. And on the borders, we have one in Crowthorne, Aldershot, Alton, Sutton and Culshorton. And quite a number of those have sort of visited our activity to see how we do it, because understanding it physically is really important. So what we're trying to do as part of this is to facilitate an informal knowledge sharing network amongst those existing repair cafes, but we're very keen to work with partners to actually help support the development of new repair cafes across the region, and do some one-to-ones if boroughs are in, you want to set something up. I'm very happy to have some short meetings to share our experience, and we've done this with a number of organisations. Sutton, for example, Runnymede, that have just set up in Aldershot. Crowthorne have visited a number of times, as have Godalming. So Farnham Repair Cafe, this was officially launched in 2014, and initially we set it up because nobody really had a blueprint of how to do it. So initially what we did was to set up a series of tests to test the system, to understand how it operates, to work out the bugs before we launched. And in 2017, we became the UK's first repair cafe charity, and I had to sort of battle with the Charities Commission to prove that a repair cafe was, worthy of charitable status. And they asked me things like, "Where's the coffee?" And I had to explain, well, it's not really what it was about. But we successfully set a precedent there, and there are a number of others now setting up as charities. And what is interesting from my sort of 30 years experience around sustainability at all sorts of different levels, particularly the local level, is, and a number of you may recognize this, sometimes launching and progressing environmental issues is like pushing a rock up an isosceles triangle. It's not easy. But what we found with repair cafes is, generally speaking, there's an open door, very high levels of positive responses by different stakeholders. And one of the key things from a visitor/customer point of view, and in a sense from an environmental point of view, is the customer gets a direct and immediate benefit. He or she will come in hoping to get a product repaired, and generally speaking, based on quite large amount of statistics now, you know, the majority will come out with a repaired product. So they're getting a benefit. They're also going with a hope, but then they actually are even more enthused when their product is repaired. For our repair cafe, we've, you know, a set of values that we've set up that relate to collaboration. And because we're a charity, it isn't just about running the repair cafe well, it's about also sharing the knowledge and experience. And we went through a bit of an evolution with the repair cafe. Initially, I positioned and partnered with a transition town group in Farnham to help us get, you know, who are a small charity set up. But in effect, this enabled us to sort of get off the ground initially, but it became quite a difficult relationship because we like to do things and others like to talk. So this led us to a position where we effectively had to reevaluate, you know, how we were going to go forward. Were we going to continue to collaborate with them? No. Were we going to set up in perhaps more directly in collaboration with the UCN? Sorry, I should have highlighted that whilst Farnham Repair Cafe is a charity, we do work in collaboration with the university, with the town council, and also the Spire Church, although it's not religiously affiliated, or we are not religiously affiliated. We've built a very good relationship with them, so it's important to have those partnerships. So effectively, the relationship didn't work out initially with transition towns, and we had to reevaluate how we were going to move forward if we were going to continue. So there's a first key lesson for anybody setting up a repair cafe is know who you're getting into bed with, and make sure that everyone's on the same piece of paper about what you're trying to achieve. What we also try to do, because repair cafes are actually quite complex, if you're trying to do it you know, professionally and well, in a sense, is as much as anything to apply the KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid. So trying to simplify things for all involved. And part of, again, our values and philosophy is something called the share repair mindset, which means that, you know, if you bring in your toaster, you can't just sort of dump your toaster with the repairer and go and get a cup of coffee in Farnham. The goal is for you to observe the repair process and learn from what you're seeing in front of your eyes. And that approach has worked well, you know, in the sense that we did, perhaps prior to lockdown, a classic sort of 100 customer survey. And we'd found through that approach, it had given, you know, a number of citizens enough confidence to then go off and repair a product themselves. And in, I think, about 50% of the 50% of the sample, which maybe wasn't so large in terms of response to that question, they had successfully repaired a product. So by seeing, they'd absorbed the information, and perhaps coupled with maybe some videos, they tried to repair, and then they were successful. So our repair cafe, effectively, if you can visualize it, people will come in with their product, and then there's a booking zone, which I'll come into, where your product is booked in and weighed, and I'll highlight that as well. And then we have a number of repair stations, and those repair stations cover electrical and small consumer electronics, mechanical, bicycles, laptops, clothing, and furniture. But we also do other items like ceramics and you know, a number of, and clocks, for example. It's amazing the skills that the guys have. What we now have, and we use COVID time to push out to try and recruit some more volunteers, is we've now got around about 25 to 27 active volunteers for the monthly sessions. And many of these are retired or semi-retired, you know, particularly on the engineering side, who want to give something back to the community. And particularly the engineers whilst part of their motivation is environmental, these engineers, they just love to solve problems. So we have to, we've got our sort of core repairer, and he will take many products back to his own workshop to work on to get the jobs done. So we've got an amazing range of repairers and volunteers. And we will do we've done a whole range of products. We've had about 2,500 products through to date, and they can range from keyboards to drones to furniture. And generally the furniture is slightly different in that normally that the furniture repairers would check the job and then take that back to their workshops to work on, and then organize to return to the customers. What we've also had is other slightly more complex products that have come in, like electric wheelchair, for example. So there was a problem with the wheel here, and the guys repaired it. But this actually very showing that there's a lot of learning by doing here, and the need to have, in a sense, policies in place. What we've had is a request to repair an electric wheelchair in somebody's home because they're not able to come into the repair cafe. And our policy is, because everybody's a volunteer, to ask the volunteers, and unfortunately, volunteers aren't prepared to go out remotely, essentially what we've identified there is perhaps another opportunity, perhaps in care homes, of items that elderly people may have in care homes that they need repairing, but your conventional repair cafe wouldn't necessarily go and repair. So that's maybe also another opportunity area to think about that's outside of the normal realm for repair cafes. What we would generally see is individual repairs, or repairs done individually by repairers, but we also have collective efforts. So here's almost like an operation going on a teddy bear to return to a child. And so, sometimes you'll see, particularly with sewing machines, you'll see the mechanical guys working with the clothing ladies to solve to come up with repair for a sewing machine. And we'll often see sometimes when there's a lot of sewing type of TV programs, suddenly we'll get a load of sewing machines in. So another interesting angle that we found is that the whole emotional attachment to products, and that is emotional attachment in the sense of product may have been bought at a certain time in the life, maybe in a wedding, or it's been inherited or something else. So this is a very interesting, little case study about actually my next door neighbour, who I didn't know was bringing in a product, turned up one day with his Hornby train that he'd got from a jumble sale or something 50 years ago, and he wanted to repair it because he wanted to show it and give it to his grandchild. So it was a great little story. We repaired the product, a lot of positive vibes there, but we actually got that story into local press because the local press really liked those personal interest stories. So what have we done? Well, we've actually run 79 events, and the data here is on 78. 4,500 visitors. We've completed about 1,700 now, over 1,800 repairs. We retain a 66% repair rate. And because we weigh the products that come in, we're able then to define, what is the weight of the successfully repaired products if we do complete repair. And bear in mind, these are smaller items that should fit through half a door, is what we say. If the door is half open, if you've got two doors, it's in that sense. And I know there's often problems with small electrical items in terms of the WEEE directive. So we're actually effectively providing a service that is not economically available, generally speaking. So we've divided about 5 tons by weight from landfill through product life extension. And through an algorithm that we've developed, we reckon this is about 47 tons of carbon we've saved as well. We actually retain, and we do, this isn't lies, damn lies and statistics. We do monitor all of this. It's not based on 100% sampling per session, but we do retain a 98% satisfaction level. What we also do to actually adhere to sort of triple bottom line sustainability thinking is that we also evaluate, you know, the cost savings through repair of people not having to buy a new product. So after the event, you know, my colleague will research the sort of present cost of products that have been repaired. So we're now well over £140,000 savings to citizens. So other sort of lessons here, that in many sort of towns in Surrey and Guildford, as I guess, I'm never quite sure if it is a city, there's a lot of local initiatives. And when you're launching a repair cafe, it's how you position that amongst the other initiatives that might sit within that place. And that there may be potential opportunities for people to crossovers there, where some of the volunteers at those other initiatives may well be interested in and have the right skills to get involved in a startup repair cafe. But again, just from the Farnham perspective, what we see is we've got the Farnham Repair Cafe, then you've got a plastics-free group, you've got a sustainable food group, you've got a cycling group. But it's sort of almost looking at the cooperation, but trying to ensure that you don't have duplication. So, as I mentioned early on, if you're setting up a repair cafe, making sure that you're very clear about any partners that you're working with, and whether you have you're on the same piece of paper. So do it again. If I was to set up a repair cafe from the beginning, it's almost to have a visioning exercise with key partners. It's important to have a central person who's overseeing the development of the repair cafe, both for, excuse me, from the launch right through to today. And for my sins, I'm that sort of person for the repair cafe, and it's almost like a general manager in a sense. You've got a bit of experience of marketing, finance, logistics. Don't have to be an expert in everything, but you need somebody to coordinate and pull the teams together and the different aspects of this. So I'm not an engineer, but I know enough about it and to actually liaise with the engineers and others who do the actual repairs. So it's important to have a different mix of skills as well that I'll come on to the moment. The next thing, and what is a very key point, the bottom line, is you need a venue. And the most proactive position is to have a venue that you don't have to pay for, because the venue, if you have to pay for it, will be one of your sort of core costs. And as a startup operation, maybe you'll have to shell out 100, 200 quid a session. So it's important to look at partnership opportunities, perhaps to collaborate to get venues. Financially, the main costs of running a repair cafe are the venue, if you have to pay for it. There are insurance costs. There are some marketing costs, but if you run it well, it shouldn't cost a lot. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. We, run it. It's a charity, but we run it in a business-like manner, and we run it in a business-like manner, and we retain a surplus, which enables us to donate some monies back to the venue to secure the venue, because it provides a fantastic place in the middle of Farnham. So getting your venue is key. Identifying your repairers is key, and starting with a small team for the tests is important. So it links back into wider issues to do with marketing, getting your message out. Ours started with a guy who actually came in and was looking at 3D printing facilities in UCA, and he sort of almost became our first guy. Then he, identified some other people. He put the message out. So it's that sort of catalytic effect, if you like. What we also one needs to do, of course, is to get your visitors, new customers. And again, that requires getting the message out by all the relevant means, through social media, Facebook, Twitter, working with the local press, developing your e-lists of visitors and customers that adheres to GDPR, et cetera, et cetera. We've been featured on BBC South and in Brazilian TV, for example. So, and many you will of course be aware of the success of the Repair Shop on BBC that started on one of the sort of BBC 4 or 5, but then is mainstream on BBC One. And I also learned when I was coming back from Taiwan, where we actually helped facilitate the development of 3 repair cafes, flicking onto the sort of TV on China Airlines. It's one of the series that's featured on China Airlines. So there's obviously a broader interest growing around repair, around the world. So marketing is key. And indeed, as I mentioned, the press like local stories. So this is again another local story that Ukrainian artist had moved to Farnham. She was gifted a bike, but there was a problem with her bike, which meant she couldn't get to the studio. She was gifted some space hat, and our guy was able to repair her bike, and she was able to continue with her art. So it's a nice little story, and that the local press like that. Insurance is key. I won't run any repair cafe session without insurance. Fortunately, and that covers both, venue insurance, but also product liability if there is an issue with a product after the event. Bizarrely, some repair cafes do run without insurance, but I certainly do not recommend that. Fortunately, the costs and premiums of insurance for repair cafes has reduced substantially now. It was a horrendous cost in the beginning because insurance companies really didn't understand it. And because they understood that there were electrical repairs, their radars immediately went up, and they didn't like that. But now there are much more affordable premiums happening. So insurance is a cost, and we had a good example of collaboration there with the town council when we were moving to our charitable status and extricating ourselves from our involvement with the small local charity. The town council provided a bridge, so we were able to place ourselves on their insurance policy. So that was really great help from the local authority, whom we retain a very good relationship with the town clerk. And I can sort of pick up some of those points in maybe in the Q&A. So in risk and health and safety, there's a balance between doing correctly. So we have a health and safety policy. We, our repairers are made aware of their health and safety responsibilities, but we don't want to make it too onerous that, again, it feels like working. So there's always this balance between doing it properly, but not making the paperwork too onerous. So, we do, fortunately have a health and safety expert on the core group of trustees. And we do, highlight, defibrillators within Farnham. If anybody had a problem, there is health and safety, first aid equipment available, and an awareness. We also undertake PAT testing, port appliance testing, visual inspections of products, but also testing of the voltage, etc. And fortunately, we were donated a PAT testing piece of kit by the university when they were going through a sort of clear out. So again, it's looking at donation opportunities. Yes, it's important to have all the repairers, whether it's electrical, mechanical engineers, etc. So, but your front desk is really key, to have a sort of welcoming bunch of team to book people in. And essentially at front desk, we have a series of forms that will be completed, that we collect data on the products and weight, etc. And also there is a disclaimer that is signed off. We don't take all products, so you know, I won't go through all the details here, but I mean, I'll just feature here mobile phones we don't take, because there are mobile phone repair shops in Farnham, so we don't want to take business away from them. And what we learned is that the trustees had a policy not to take, for example, flat screen TVs, but then we found that a number of repairers like to repair them. So it's always this issue about not making assumptions and talking to your volunteers. Also, if we get anything we learned by hard experience, anything looks like an antique needs to be discussed between the customer and the repairer, and then there's an agreement, you know, to go forward or not. So repair cafes are about repair, but also they're about community and the social dimension. Very important. So from the research we undertook amongst visitors, visitors will come in hoping to get a repair done, and they come out, generally speaking, with a repair completed. What they don't come in with, but come out with, is then this tremendous sense of community. So it is both social and environmental and social, if you like. And just in speeding up to finish up, we were hit by COVID like everybody else, and we had to think, well, how are we going to continue? And so we had to really think about our business model and how could we operate, you know, under COVID in its variations. We initially set up a WhatsApp group, very basic in today's world, but we hadn't done it. And that is now a brilliant initiative to connect up all the repairers and to share information, and was very useful in COVID to keep people connected. We tried some online events through Facebook, and we were able to provide advice on about 70 different occasions, but couldn't do any physical repairs online, and it didn't really work. And that was an experience of others around the country. What we also did during COVID is to generally share our experience through a series of webinars, you know, which were well attended by other repair cafes around the country, and included some repair connection events right at the heart of COVID to keep some people connected. And this was a brilliant example of a grandfather who brought a grandson and who repaired a light live online. So fantastic for intergenerational point. This is what it looked like, you know, in the busy days, early days, and we then decided to shift to an online model during the COVID times, when we were able to start to open. But of course, we had restrictions on the number of people in the room. So we developed an online model and an online booking system that was triaged, and effectively this is what you were welcomed by, not always by the Farnham town mayor, but he was there, you know, at some occasions. And so you didn't have that social dimension. So it worked. And what we did was bag and tag, you know, all the products. So they came in, they were, you know, bagged and quarantined. The repairers wouldn't open them for 72 hours. So we really adhered to best practice in terms of science. But it worked, and we did the repairs, and even the repair rates went up, but it didn't have that social dimension. So we kept going. We've then sort of gradually moved back, you know, during the times of, you know, guys wearing masks and customers wearing masks. And we, in a sense, made our own decisions as the trustees. For each meeting, we said, do we wear masks? Are we confident? What is the best science? We didn't necessarily adhere in the latter stages to the government, because we were not getting clear advice. So we, as responsible, you know, adults, made our own decisions in relation to responsibility of our own volunteers and customers. And effectively, we're now able to go, we were able to move back into a larger part of the church. And this is what's it looks like. So just in closing here, part of the new things that we're looking at are, we've now got a project to mine all the data associated with the 1800 repairs. We've got a project to really understand that in greater detail, what have been the problems, what are the solutions, and what we can see from the data on the bottom is only 8% of the products that come in sight unseen are not repaired or in effect advice given. We've also developed a repair carbon calculator that's freely available to anyone, any related body, and this helps calculate the carbon emissions associated with repairs. We've started 3D printing of specific components for repair, and we are getting that back and up and going again. We've had visitors from around the world. These are 2 visitors from Thailand. What we also did just prior to lockdown is we initiated the UK's first Repair Cafe conference with around about 80 delegates. We're probably going to do that again this year. And we also shared the knowledge into Taiwan, and I just returned from a second session over the Christmas New Year period where we shared knowledge there. Also held a wider European event with 100 attendees. And just in closing, we can't forget that the repair cafes are all about people. So prior to lockdown, we hosted a dinner for all our repairers. The majority came with their partners. We now moved that to a barbecue. And again, similar situation. People turned up. So it's about the team, but it's also about the happy customers and getting those products repaired. So hopefully that is useful, and can open it up for questions. And I will try and stop screen sharing if I can. Ooh. Anyway, whilst I'm battling with the technology, perhaps, hopefully that was interesting. And please, anybody kick off with a question. Is that Ben?
Yeah, hiya, Martin. Sorry, there's 3 of us here, but we're in Quadrant Court in Woking. I'm Ben from Surrey County Council, but we're on a massive table because we couldn't get the telly to work, so apologies for leaning in. I was going to ask if you're able to share any of the reporting you've got, because from our perspective, the 3 of us here, myself, Neve and Jake, are looking at what community projects we can support. And obviously there's the Your Fund Surrey grant money through the councils, but obviously it would really help our case if we had carbon reporting, waste reporting that we could use to convince people. So if you're able to share that with us, that would be extremely handy.
Yeah, no, what I'll do is I'll share with the whole group the link to our repair carbon calculator. So that's brilliant. Freely available and is being used by a variety of repair cafes around the world. So it's a very user-friendly tool, but there's a sort of an engine behind it, if you see what I mean. So okay, it's a bit of sophistication behind it, but it's hopefully very user-friendly. So happy to do that.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Yeah. The other thing I was going to mention is, so I'm also one of the trustees at Zero Carbon Guildford, which runs the Space Zero. And we just launched a library of things about a month or 2 ago. It's quite popular. The thermal imaging camera, for example, is booked out till mid-March. I'm not sure you even get a temperature differential then, but there's some really popular stuff in there. And I wondered if you knew of any existing projects where they sort of team up the two. So, for example, I know you've said obviously a big part of it is sitting down and watching, but if it's, people who would be more inclined to just chuck something in the bin, whether there's a good link up there between, saying, well, we've actually got a library of things where we store toasters, kettles, so you can just drop it in and you can take one, whether there's any sort of existing examples of that where it shows there's increased uptake in the repair cafe because people get a spare while they're waiting for theirs to come back.
So my understanding is that Godalming, who've recently set up a repair cafe, had a library of things. So I think somewhere around Godalming. What I'll also share is a report that we're involved in several years ago that was tracking this. So there are definitely examples around England, Scotland and Wales where they are looking at sort of multiple services within a sort of community context.
Yeah.
We found was one of the areas that we explored was thinking about maybe a maker space or something like this. But what we found, and not just our experience, but also into Europe, is the makers are a slightly different group from the repairers.
Okay.
So it's a slightly different thing. But anyway, I'll share. So I think Godalming have something, and also I'm aware there are some other initiatives around the country that you can maybe borrow from.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I know the Godalming, Shirley and David it is in Godalming, isn't it? And I think I see Joanne there as well, who's Waverley Borough Council. So yeah, that'd be really handy to know, because obviously this is the sort of thing that if we're looking at, I suppose, smaller hubs similar to what Zero is, but focus more on waste and repair, those three things I suppose go quite hand in hand, really, don't they? Even though they're all slightly different, including the makerspace. I think there's good opportunity to team up people keen on those sort of things. So yeah, really keen to try and stay in touch and help where we can, really.
I did have some meetings with somebody from Woking who was looking to set up a repair cafe. This is one always has the sort of COVID takeaway of 2 years, so it's probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. Has anything progressed in Woking?
I don't think so. No, there's the We Act guys here now, so Woking Environmental Action, and they're linked into Woking Borough Council. So
this was a guy, I think his day job.
I think a lot of the time it's getting through that.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, frozen.
Sorry, I think you've frozen. Is it us that's frozen?
I think it was you.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think part of the issue what we get anyway with people coming to Zero is there's is it me that's frozen? Can you hear me?
You're back on again. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of the time we get, you got volunteers for it, but it's that difficulty of knowing how to get through the first tricky stages of it. So I think, yeah, if there's a way that we can sort of put some of this information together, then hopefully it inspires people to do it rather than them starting from scratch. It's a bit of a game changer, I think.
Generally, I mean, repair cafes are driven by citizens. So it's getting your core group, your first person, and then your core group. Where my experience in terms of the role of local authorities is as a helping hand. What we get offered, small grants from our town clerk, which is helpful for a few things, but I think it's, rather than intervening in a sense directly, it's being that helping hand and the pointing hand. I think some a bit careful on how I say that. There's been some instances with local authorities being involved that haven't necessarily produced repair cafes that have longevity. So I think it needs to be ownership by individuals to sort of take it forward. So, but we've just our Farnham repair cafe, very good relationship. We're now in the sort of Farnham town sort of brochure each year and featured, and they want to run they're running in that general thing about events and what goes on Farnham, something on repair. So in a sense, we've become part of the community. So I think it's sort of thinking through how is the best way to stimulate this.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks very much. And yeah, if you can share those things we mentioned, that'd be really helpful. That'd be brilliant.
Okay, great. Any other questions, thoughts, observations? The names left here.
I was just wondering, Chantal, where the Egham one was, and whether that was part of the sort of in sheds or sheds kind of.
It's actually just literally come up on the radar yesterday.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. I wonder why I hadn't heard of it, and I thought.
I hadn't heard of it.
Okay.
And, it was just within the sort of another network. There is, I think the name of the email name is something like Lady Tires or something very strange.
Oh yes, I know that. I think I actually know the person you're talking about. I think I've worked with her before. Sort of quite obviously into environmental and
so I understand that she's really keen to do something, but is struggling.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
So
maybe Yeah, can connect with her. Yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, sorry. So next week, what we've got is this sort of informal network between the existing repair cafes,
Okay.
and encouraging her to join that, to maybe learn, to see what the challenges she's facing, and whether almost within the group we could crowdsource some support for her in terms of a direction.
Yeah, and please, she'll know me. I worked with her, I think, for our COVID Champions scheme. But if, tell her that she can approach the council and speak to me at the council, and if I can help in any way, then I'll do that.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Thank you.
So, who's left on the screen without me? I see Joanne's popped up.
I don't know if I've missed this, but do customers actually pay or donate?
No, it's a good question, and I should have highlighted that. So it's entirely up to the individual. So we receive donations. We have so on average we've got about a £7 donation. We don't require donations because people value the service so much. They will often donate even if the product has not been successfully repaired, because they see the initiative, the positive nature of it. In terms of broader funding of the Repair Cafe, we rely primarily on grants. We rely primarily on the donations. We do get a certain number of small grants, but we can run the operation on the donations, because actually the operational costs of running a repair cafe, if you do it tight, don't have to be very high.
Okay, thank you.
So some others who haven't spoken, any comments from Sarah, Delma, Jamie, or JTA? Hi, Sarah.
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering how often it was actually open. You may have mentioned that, but I can't.
It's open once a month, so
Okay.
it's the second Saturday of each month.
Wow.
And what we're very happy to do is, if people are thinking about setting one up or want to discuss things, is just to pop along, see how we do it, and then I would sort of generally try and find 20 minutes, half an hour to sit down with people just to chat through any interest areas or challenges. So for example, with the Sutton one, the guy visited about 3 times. So and we then separately we had a new group. We'd had, I think, 2 visits from Crowthorne, and a totally separate group from Crowthorne visited this weekend. So it's in a sense, people can sort of pick up on the concept and intuitively understand it, but you don't really get to grips with how it operates until you physically see something in action. So
yeah,
and we're quite happy to help find a time to support people with that.
brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I don't want to interrupt anyone else, but
Go ahead.
What was I going to say? So I'm obviously still quite new to the coordinator role, and I don't have, even though I've kind of redirected and changed my entire kind of career in education around going towards sustainability and conservation and such, I don't have a lot of background experience in this kind of thing. And like the previous coordinator of the Guildford Repair Cafe, Catty Smith, she was the climate change officer for GBC. So, she had a lot of networking opportunities, and as grateful as I am to the community wellbeing team at the Hive in Guildford, who have supported me in kind of getting the cafe like back up and running again after COVID, I'm still thinking, where should I practice? What after there, or often, have people coming, if you need to, what I do to really like restore it to its former glory, really.
So I mean, what I suggest, Susie, is as you're now involved in running the Guildford or trying to get the Guildford one up and running, that I can invite you to the informal network of the other, Surrey repair cafes, and you can join the meeting if you want to next week. And that could be another way for, and maybe to bring to that meeting maybe a couple of core questions, core issues you're facing. And then we could sort of go around the other repair cafes and ourselves to give you some advice.
That would be absolutely fantastic.
So
Thank you.
I'll send you the invite to the meeting, and we'll go from there. And I'll add you to the list of existing Surrey repair cafes.
Thank you. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah. Okay, Ben, I see your hand up. Yeah.
You went a bit robotic there, Susie, so I didn't really hear much after the hive, but I would also offer the invite that if you wanted to ever do, every third session in the town centre, you're very welcome to use Zero as a space. Obviously, we get a lot of extra foot traffic, so it's quite good advertising. Flip side is obviously the hive is in Westborough, so it is one of the priority neighbourhoods. But if you want to come and use Zero, it aligns with our charitable objectives, so we wouldn't charge you for using the space. So very welcome to email in, and I think you might have been chatting to Mark maybe from Zero, but you're very welcome to use the space if you ever want to as well, if it helps spread the word.
One bit of Guildford advice is that, I think the way that the Borough Council was literally thinking about with their repair cafe was, in a sense, quite logical. They were looking at Park Barn because there was a higher per capita or lower per capita income in that place. But one of the psychological issues that emerged that I've seen in other places is that that was a problematic location. A, it was out of the way, and B, people didn't necessarily want to be seen bringing in an old item to be repaired. They want to be seen with a new item. So I think a key issue for you guys in Guildford is location. Getting a, if it's in a sense, if it's now operating outside the local authority, after Guildford Borough Council, maybe you've got more freedom to think about perhaps where you base it, where there might be more footfall.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I know that in the past, the hive, it's gone through quite a journey over the years. When I was a kid and I used to go over there, it was more of a kind of community centre for the older folks, whereas now there is such a wide community that go there, and it is really beneficial having it there because a lot of people already attend the hive, they already know where it is, and they're part of that community there. So it's quite easy to kind of encourage them to come along whenever we have our sessions. It really sucks that our sessions are on the same days, though. We do ours on the second Saturday as well, and I was hoping to come along to one of your sessions, but we'll have to figure that out another time. But Ben, that would really, really help to have the occasional session at Zero. Obviously,
again, you're going a bit robotic again. Robotic again here. So, the other thing that I seem to remember is that they were thinking about rotating it in different parts of Guildford at some stage. And certainly what you do see in larger, cities in Europe like Berlin and Ghent in Belgium is they have multiple repair cafes. And so that's another thing, obviously, if you're starting off, you probably start with one. But I think, perhaps you need to think through what are your objectives. If your objectives are to get to a wider audience and get greater footfall, maybe Park Barn isn't the best place for it. But if the goals are to support that community more specifically, maybe it is the right objective. So I think there's something about what are you, in a sense, trying to achieve there. Maybe it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Offers there anyway, Susie.
I think I might have to stick with sorry. Yeah, of course. No, I think I've already spoken to you, Ben, anyway. I think you phoned me one day and yeah, we've already had a chat about your library of things.
Oh, okay.
But
It
yeah,
might have been Mark or Dave, maybe, but yeah, we're
maybe it
definitely
might
keen to
have been
host you if it helps spread the word. Then yeah, do
Yeah.
just reach out. We're happy to host the session, no charge for it, so totally fine.
that would help. Yeah, I mean, it's really helpful at the moment to have that support from the community wellbeing team, which are supported and ran by Guildford Borough Council. So it's helpful to have that, and obviously the Hive is a free space for us as well, so we're almost working in partnership with them at the moment. So I'll stick with the Hive for now, and then I think once we've actually built up a bit more of a customer base, then we could perhaps expand and go a bit further abroad.
Okay, it's sort of 2 o'clock now, and if you have any further questions, please email short, sharp questions. What I always like to do just in these things is just very, very briefly, quickly with the remaining people in the room, Susie, Joanne, Ben, Chantal, is just one key thing that you got out of the session that you hadn't thought about, you was challenging or different. So what was one key thing that you got out of the session today, or one idea or thought? So maybe, as you're the most visible on the screen, Ben, perhaps I'll start with you if that's okay.
Well, I think the reporting thing is really useful. I didn't know that tool existed as a sort of universal tool for it, so that's extremely helpful, I think, from where us guys here are coming from in terms of trying to help kickstart what communities are doing and just offer that bit of background support. That's really useful for us making the argument.
I'm sorry, it's a bit of an aside, because I know historically Woking's leadership around the climate change agenda. Do you guys pick up the climate change side within Woking? Because it may be a separate conversation I might want to have with you guys about something that we're looking at.
Yeah, well, we're Surrey County Council, but we just happen to be in the Woking office today. So me and Nick are on the climate change team. So I'm a senior climate officer, and Jake spans sort of engagement and strategic energy. So, but we do have Thursday meetings with all the climate officers once every 3 weeks, I think. So I can link you up with the Woking. I forgot how. I've not slept much this week. I can't remember her name.
Okay.
Really, Laura, her name is Laura.
Okay.
I can link you up if it's helpful.
Yeah, that would
be supportive to WeAct.
Well, maybe if I email you the carbon link specifically, I will email its whole group. But then if you could sort of respond with that person, that would be a great one. So,
no problems.
Susie, Joanne, Chantal, any comments, any quick thoughts, anything you got out of the session today?
Just that it sounds exciting, and as a community officer, I'm happy to help in any way I can to help with the setup. We have pots of funding in some areas that need to be spent specifically in areas for Runnymede. There's one in Englefield Green, which I think that lady comes from. I mentioned Egham, but it might just be across the border. So I'm just looking forward to having something, and it works well in other boroughs, and having something set up in Runnymede is can't wait.
Okay, well that's great. And Joanne, Susie?
I just, from the personal point of view, the emotional and the social side of it struck me. And regrettably, I could have done with going to a repair cafe with my toaster, which I got for my wedding, and then had to replace it with one that was nowhere near as good as my old one, but there we are.
We're always there in the future.
Yes, great. Thank you.
And Susie, anything?
Well, I've certainly very much appreciated listening about the reporting side of things, and actually trying to build those statistics. I've kept a lot of the bits of paper, feedback papers and things from previous sessions back when Catty ran it, purely for analysing and kind of building up that statistic of, how much weight we managed to save and things like that. So that's definitely been helpful for me in moving forward, and also just networking in general, knowing how many people there are out there and communicating with other people, because we're all doing the same thing, we've all got the same goal, so we can all work together in achieving that. So it's been lovely to meet everyone here who's shares that same goal.
Okay, well, brilliant. Guys, well, thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully the recording has been recorded, and I will share that as well alongside the repair carbon calculator. And if you know, the opportunity to, you know, if you do have groups who are interested in launching a repair cafe in your space or spaces, we're happy to have a brief chat with them or encourage them to come and see what we do, because it'd be great to if we could launch a few more repair cafes and maybe make Surrey one of the centres of repair cafes in the UK.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
That'd be a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, Ed. Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.